Hey, this is Trav here, and this podcast relies on the good people who help support this podcast on Patreon, and I'd like to give a big thank you to Bill, Bree, Brendan, Grant, Lisa, Mog, Dan, and Paula. Thank you so much, and here's the show. Hey, welcome to episode 172, Tales from the Mind Boat, the slow-moving boat ride inside the dreamy, unconscious, and somewhat conscious, heavy, medicated mind of me, Trav Nash. That is who I am speaking, and thank you for listening. On today's show is all about being under the influence of prescription medication, and how in some ways it helps deal with anxiety and depression, but in other ways it can dull your sense of drive and artistic expression. So it's a good show, and all you need to do is sit back, relax, think about where we're going to be in the next 10 years as we set sail. Lately I've been sandwiched comfortably between two familiar states of being. No longer do I feel like I'm drowning in anxiety or self-perpetuated self-loathing. No longer prone to wild mood swings that sway back and forth with no real explanation as to why I can't regulate my own state of mind. Thanks to my prescription medication, I've been cushioned from all the negative aspects that I've lived with for far too long. Although I do feel like I have a pillow strapped tightly to each side of my head, muffling my senses and the intake of the world around me. The colours seem to be dulled, the reaction time has been slowed down, and I feel drained of the fuel that kept the fires of creativity alight. I can only see what's ahead, and am no longer distracted by the shadows that may be creeping on either side. The switch inside my head has been clicked into the middle, and it's locked me into a completely neutral state of being. I find myself unaffected by things that would have sent me into a downward spiral of panic, and now I just sit and stare half-glazed at my phone as I tap brightly coloured shapes on the screen to reach a score that means nothing in the great scheme of things. Sometimes I think about the great accomplishments by better people than myself that they have achieved during their lifetime. Art that still exists today and continues to inspire and provoke a reaction to even the most stoic of minds. Masterpieces of engineering that bridge two nations together, or controversial pieces of prose that snapped a whole country from their daydream and encouraged them to break free from the routine and the shackles of a life that was already mapped out for them. It's these people who inspire others. They use the power of their words and charisma to bring down any wall and change the antiquated popular opinion. These are the kinds of people who are driven by their emotions, the kinds of people who are driven by passion and determination. They may get angry at the vast unfairness of life, and it's through this anger that they try and make this world a little better. And I once foolishly believed I could be one of these people. I felt like I had something to say, but never had the courage to really focus my energy to try and be that loudest voice in the room. Like many, I don't really like drawing a lot of attention to myself, and of good reason. Because few people in this world want their idyllic lives shook up, and fear the fact that things need to change before anything can get better. The moment you step forward and point this out and speak out is the moment that you become a target. You are looked into and overanalyzed for all your mistakes and failures that soon become weaponized and used against you to push you back in line and to shut you up. Those you may convert to the cause will also become targets and labelled as radicals, and their sanity will be brought into question. Many will ask themselves, who would want to change this good life that was already played out for me? But those kinds of people cannot see the long term or understand you're deluding yourself if you think this is the best we can make this world for ourselves and our future. and I've always understood this. I've seen the same power struggle rise and fall with the smallest groups in primary school playgrounds, to long-term friendships splintered by jealousy and the feelings of inadequacy that poison good intentions and cloak it with suspicion and ulterior motives. I've always understood this fact, that it's very hard for all of us to get along, even with those who feel most comfortable following a cause or a just code of living. There is still a desire to always consider yourself on the right side of the fence, or possibly history. Boiling down everything to its two polar opposites is a far too simple way to look and experience the world, but at the same time, hiding in the middle doesn't propel you further and is more than likely to hold you back. And this is where I seem to be now, someplace in between, and for such a long time I thought this is what I've always wanted. I've envied those who managed to work out the secret to never under or overreacting. They seem so cool, calm and collected at all times. There is something fascinating and somewhat magnetic about such people. But the truth is, it's a life without drive. People do extraordinary things because something triggered them. The tether that was keeping them at bay was pulled off, and with this newfound freedom, they did everything they could to make their own lives better and free those still enslaved in a perpetual daydream. The danger of feeling neither the highs or lows is that you lose the ability to continue the fight. What you want to do is sit this round out and let someone else who's more cut out for the role to carry on for you. And I guess I've always wanted this. I've always wanted the break or the breather, a little time out for me. But the break that I took now seems to expand for infinity, and I can't find a way to jump back in again. The rapid pace of change transforms everything instantly and can make you feel less and less likely to want to be a part of this new world that was built over the ruins of the ones we just killed off. I barely flinched when the transformer blew in the middle of last night and the power switched off, reset and came back on again. My reaction time was too slow to process what had happened. By the time I caught up again, the problem had already sorted itself out. And that in itself is the main problem. I have a feeling of being useless. The more zoned out I am, the more this world will continue on with or without me. This is a reminder of how insignificant I am. The dreams I had of feeling like an outsider, and how that could possibly work in my favor to one day change things from the outside in, is slowly fading away into the fray. Perhaps unconsciously I've given up. This game was never designed to be won or lost. It just needs to be played until everyone discovers how pointless it really is. All things have become mad and crazed, a constant never-ending drip feed of bad decisions by incompetent people that have wasted their lives fooling others that they deserve to be where they are today. And nothing makes any sense. It all plays out as if it's a hypothetical worst-case scenario, like some intelligent being sits back and waits to see what we do next. But I'm sure we constantly surprise ourselves by how much we can endure, even when the odds are stacked against us. But now that I'm medicated, I feel even more like an outsider, experience real life as if it's a surreal painting, showing a place that's dreamed up in the darkest corners of some mad artist's mind. Someone who painted the unthinkable just to imagine what utter chaos can look like when all things go to hell. It seems completely alien to me. It doesn't feel like I'm even sharing the same reality. I can't seem to grasp any kind of explanation or a way of coming up with a plan on how I should conduct myself in this worst case scenario. It feels like a plane going down, and no one is screaming or overcome with terror. Somehow, unconsciously, we all must have known this is the inevitable end of the story. We all seem to be in agreement that things will be better off this way. We've had a good run, and during our time we've ruined it for almost every living thing that was doing fine until we crawled out of the ocean. I think about this dwindling time we have left, and how we continue to ignore what an educated scientific mind tells us of facts, that things cannot continue the way they are. But nobody seems to listen or care, and keeps following that same routine as the day before, and will continue to do so until gravity pulls us back down, until it's a jarring crash that will be quick and sudden, and it won't be our problem anymore. Every day just feels like a daydream. A clock that's slowly speeding up as it counts down until the sun goes down and returns back in the sky again. Streets of cars and trucks move in between work and home, and then when the moon hangs over the horizon, the streets lay empty and quiet except for the occasional teenagers clinking bottles and loudly announcing their adolescent sense of freedom and invulnerability. Street sweeper trucks flash its light and hum along at a slow pace, preparing the roads for the following day's traffic. Possums scatter up trees and onto rooftops of apartment blocks, to avoid being caught in the overexposed white light that illuminates as it passes. They run across power lines to higher ground, and then silence settles for the night again, with the occasional car that goes by that cuts through the silence gently. And as soon as it passes through, the silence sews up any gaps again, filling the empty spaces with that familiar and calming nothing that becomes stillness. I can't sleep, but everyone around me seems to be doing fine, doing what I cannot. My cats have fallen asleep beside my partner and I, and our littlest one is making a tiny wooing sound as he breathes in and out in a perfect rhythm that is soothing and adorable at the same time. The lack of light in the room shrouds the walls that are normally painted by daylight, but my eyes slowly adjust and make out what is there, overlapped by scattered flashes of static that blink in and out of existence. I just can't stop thinking. I can't stop feeling like another day has gone by and I've accomplished nothing of importance. I can't stop reimagining how a second chance or a do-over would fix the situation, but eventually I would come to the conclusion that I would more than likely waste the day just as I had already done before and continue to do so. It's almost become a routine, a predictable pattern that I am all too aware of, and maybe deep down I don't want it to stop because not doing anything seems to be the safe alternative. There is no failure if you don't try, and maybe that's why everything has been brought to a halt for so long. A reason needs to be searched, identified, and found just to convince myself to get out of bed, and at least do the basic things I need to as a human being. The cold winter mornings try their best to persuade me to stay where I am, wrapped up in the warm blanket insulating my own body heat and my cat Belle who sits on my stomach. The need to get up is inevitable, and I make a deal with myself. If I get up now, I could always go back to bed. I know it's useless to try and trick yourself, but somehow I always sound convincing, or at least we come to some kind of compromise. Once I am up, I take a handful of pills and sit on the couch and alternate between watching some YouTube video or looking at my phone and listening to some YouTube video. I try to maintain a comfortable level of switching the brain to autopilot for an hour or so I can just daydream awake for a while. When you don't have a consistent set of hours of sleep, you construct these times when you can zone out. You appear to be awake, doing something, but really, I'm no longer there. I'm daydreaming. I'm only operating at the bare minimum of what I need to keep the whole system running a little longer. And the more I practice this state of being, the harder it is to come back and actually do anything that's really productive. I can sit at my computer for hours with applications open that could compose music or create games, or even have the ability to make short animated films. But I just sit there with my mind a blank. It's as if I'm under some hypnotic spell and only make small, subtle movements with my hands as I type out short sentences in open chat windows or compulsively check all my tabs of validation of something I posted. And that validation is short-lived, and I'm reminded that I have to maintain people's attention by feeding this never-ending fountain of content that spews forth into a digital public arena where people just take what they want and go about their day. I know this, but still repeat this process, the cycle that I've assigned myself, this need to be able to zone out but still produce something in this magical state of not being awake and not dreaming. The day slips by in an instant, but the nights seem long and slowly crawl as I lay there and worry about how I'm ever going to catch up on all the things I should be doing with my life. I scroll through my media feeds and see so much great work from better artists than myself, and I feel insignificant and restricted by my own self-doubt and motivation to exceed. Even if I could drink a magical potion that could grant me the ability to mimic these kinds of heights, sooner or later I would resort back to my original self again. A stretched rubber band will always return to its similar shape, but if you stretched it too thin, it will more likely rip and become useless. There are times when I can snap out of the spell and maintain concentration and feel compelled to get things done in these moments. I try to get as much done as I can before the fire burns itself out. And I love this feeling, true creativity. It makes me feel alive and given something of myself through the tools I have self-taught myself. Sometimes when I'm deflated again, I look at my past work and I feel like the work was done by somebody else. I feel completely disconnected by it. I can't believe I would ever take the time to make something that already makes me feel tired just imagining the work that must have gone into it. At the same time, it lights a small ember of inspiration again. Just enough to give birth to new ideas, shapes and colours, melding of these ideas together to form something that needs to alter the boring white blank pages in my sketchbook. The drive is always there to make something new, but each day I lack the motivation to follow through with making these ideas a reality. I guess what it comes down to is that I'm glad I'm not so controlled by my anxiety and that crippling depression that has plagued me for far too long. But the cost of the medicating myself from these hindrances is the price of not being fully awake, not being fully aware, and losing that drive to make something of not only myself, but the art that represents me and the complexities of who I am and what I want to say. It's a balancing act of no net in a circus where people only come to watch someone fall and break something. There is a dark side of humanity that loves to see someone rise from obscurity but then plummet back down to earth because they well exceeded our own limitations that we placed upon ourselves. There is no straight line between 2 points. The route can rise and fall and take sharp turns to avoid a head-on collision at any point. A bumper sticker I saw in a car read once, "Expect the unexpected," and I guess there is more truth to that than a lot of other fractured sentences people proudly slap on the back of windows to amuse the car stuck behind them in traffic. To expect that unexpected, I guess you need to be awake, just like those signs that remind you to take a rest every now and then while driving, as falling asleep at the wheel is dangerous. It can put you or others in danger, and this also applies to our journey in life. It's important to maintain control, to assess that future that is coming rapidly towards you, and how best to navigate through. It's hard to do this when life is preserved in a daydream, freeze-dried, and sitting there waiting to be used when the time is right. Subtracting yourself from the equation is not an option anymore, because the days are counting down, the nights slip into days with rapid succession and will gain speed if you don't try to make an effort to stay awake while there is light to see where you're going. I want to try and maintain a balance with a new medicated state of synthetic reality, but at the same time I want to still feel something, to be driven by it, inspired to express the conflict that is the struggle to convince yourself to keep going. And if I can turn any of this into some kind of art that is unique and is important to myself and others, then maybe it might snap me out of this daydream for good this time. That's it for another show. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. It really does mean a lot to me. If you like this episode, then like and subscribe in the very device you're using right now. That would really help this podcast out. It makes it a little bit more visible to the million other podcasts that are floating around your head right now. You can follow this podcast on Facebook and Twitter just by searching for Tales from the Mind Boat. Doing so lets me know that this is something that you like that I do and you support it. You can also follow my personal Twitter account at Nashtopia, or you can follow my Instagram art diary at Trav Nash Draws Things. The music for this podcast is composed by Tim Whitt. You can listen to his music right now just by subscribing to SoundCloud or checking his music out on Bandcamp, where you can pick up his albums for whatever you think is fair. This episode was written, produced, spoken, and copied and pasted together by me, Trav Nash, and you're welcome. So that's it for another week. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast again. I really do appreciate it. I hope you have a good week. I hope you stay warm if you're on this side of the equator. Until next Monday, stay safe, look after yourself. Peace.